Remember earlier, I think it was early last week, I put up a video talking about how the Chicago Buyers Club was actually ripped off back in the 60s. And basically, a lot of your poverty is actually rooted through these racist redlining policies. And I had a lot of pushback from a lot of the millennials saying that this is just victimhood explaining. In other words, blaming white supremacy for your problems with no basis. And it was just another excuse for what they see as a mediocre culture or a damaged mediocre culture. Now, I have been person number one to say that the United States Negro has a damaged culture. That is not even in question. They've written so many books about how screwed up we are coming out of slavery and in this oppressive system that we have not fixed ourselves or even been allowed to fix ourselves. Even to this day, every policy that they pass lessens the ability for the American Negro to fix themselves. They won't allow us to separate. They won't allow us to live and build in peace. Still today, they make money off the backs of the American Negro. Not as much as they used to, but they still do. And here's a article I found from May 2018. So this is definitely not 1964 from the Chicago Buyers League. This is definitely not 1968. This is not 2008, right after during the crash. This is 2018 that's still going on. How redlining still hurts home values. This is in Baltimore. In Baltimore, homes located in formerly redlined neighborhoods are worth 44% less than properties in surrounding areas. That's very consistent. The housing market's recovery has lifted property prices nationwide, but many homes located in formerly redlined neighborhoods haven't seen the same benefit. Though the practice was technically outlawed in 1968, remember I played the video about President Johnson basically outlawing the redlining practice in 1968, even though people such as Emil still don't believe it. More facts in your face. Its most pernicious effects are still visible today. I actually played a audio from a realtor that still says even though you live in a gentrified area, they redline you instead of your area. On average, a home located in an area that was given a hazardous rating back in the 1930s is only worth 85% of the median value of a home in surrounding non-red line neighborhoods, according to a recent study from the real estate website Zillow ZG. Redlining dates back to the period following the Great Depression. A federal agency at the time, the Homeowners Loan Corporation, was tasked with assessing metropolitan areas nationwide for the risk associated with real estate investments so that lenders could avoid riskier mortgages. 4 categories of neighborhoods were created: best, still desirable, definitely declining, and hazardous. And maps were drawn using different colors to designate an area's level of risk. Areas assessed as hazardous were outlined in red. The determination of whether or not a neighborhood and its homes were risky investments was largely made on the basis of race, and predominantly black neighborhoods were typically redlined. Zillow's report was based on geocoding data produced by Mapping Inequity, a project coordinated by researchers at 4 universities aimed at exposing repercussions of redlining policies. For homeowners in some parts of the country, the discrepancy is even more acute. In Atlanta, Georgia, and Tampa, Florida, the median values of homes redlined areas is still less than half of those located in surrounding areas. Redlining's legacy affects more than just home prices. The practice of redlining meant that people of color in the United States were effectively denied access to home ownership for decades, since it was so difficult for them to get a mortgage because of where they lived. That has had a long-term effect on their ability to build wealth. Believe it or not, and people disagree, especially young folks nowadays, The vast majority of people's wealth in America for the middle class is through their homes. To this day, the home ownership rate among white people is significantly higher than it is for other races. According to data from the U.S. Census Bureau, as of the fourth quarter of 2017, 72.7% of non-Hispanic white households were homeowners, as compared to 42.1% of black households, 58% of Asian and Pacific Islanders, and 46.6% of Hispanic households. So basically, it ain't just us, folks. It ain't just us. And you can't say Asians are extremely violent. Home ownership is one of the main pathways to building wealth. I just said that. Consequently, the lower home ownership rates within communities of color have contributed to the persistent wealth gap. You hear that, Amir? Boosting the returns on home ownership for black families will reduce the wealth gap with white families by more than 17,000 or 16%, according to data from public policy organizations Demos and the Institute for Assets and Social Policy at Brandeis University. The Zillow report did find that not all cities see this perpetual discrepancies in property values between redline neighborhoods and other areas. Once redline parts of Boston, Minneapolis, Philadelphia, and Portland now have higher median home values than other areas. But even then, this seemingly auspicious change of fortune likely doesn't help people of color. With the renewed popularity of inner cities, in particular in recent years, some formerly redline areas are now experiencing a renaissance of sorts. But even in these areas, success is relative, Zillow chief economist said in the report. Gentrification, and in an eminent domain, for example, have both reshaped cities and often displaced longtime residents, many of them people of color. In other words, they're the same homes, the same places. The only thing is when they push the black people out, home prices go up. And practices reminiscent of redlining are not things of the past. A recent analysis of demographic data in the housing market from the Center for Investigative Reporting revealed that lenders seemingly continue to discriminate on the basis of race, I just said that, and ethnicity when making mortgage decisions. This is from May 2018. This is a year ago. It's not 50 years ago. It's not 60 years ago. This is a year ago. It's still happening. It's not in the past. So that bullshit, that racism still doesn't affect you, is just that bullshit. We got too many young folks with their goddamn heads in the sand. I'm not saying that you don't go out and compete. You should. But at the same time, you go out and compete, you try to get the fairest game that you can. You cannot stop struggling, moving forward to get your fair shake. You keep wondering how come you can't get black people to come along with you. I slipped through the cracks. How come you can't? That's why it's a crack instead of a door. Only a few people can actually get through it. And then you wonder how come you're on the other side of the door by yourself. It's not rocket science, folks. Black people think you can only do one thing at a time. You can do more than one thing at a time. You can push to your government for equity and also push for wealth. There are entrepreneurs in slavery. There were wealthy people when other black folks majority of black folks were in chains. There were millionaires in Jim Crow, but those people were slipping through the cracks, and they knew that they were rare. So pretending like this is a new day, it is. Are things better? Yes, they are. Are things perfect? No, they're not. And just because you think that the boomers and the previous generation should have done everything doesn't mean that you don't still have work to do. People keep asking me, what happened to the ball? The ball is in the young folks' hands, but the young folks won't pick it up and run with it. They keep wanting old folks to carry the ball for them. Just because you have more avenues for success doesn't mean that you need to stop fighting for your fair share in this government. You can do both. You should do both. You have to do both, because if you don't, the gains that you make now will be taken away. I point you to the 2008 crash. I know lots of millionaires that made plenty of money off of property and bought houses and apartment buildings all over the country. They got wiped out. That can happen. A lot of wealth got lost during the 2008 crash. That can easily happen. You still have to petition your government. You still have to do the legwork. Anyway, that's all I got for this one. This is BGS out, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.